In the last videos of this channel, we have talked a lot about how Stoicism can help us improve our lives, how we've learned to deal with our emotions, expanding our cognitive capacity, which allows us to think clearly and have mental resilience to deal with life's adversities. But how to fit Stoicism into some of the current difficulties of our day-to-day life in a more practical way. Have you ever used public transportation during rush hour? Have you ever entered a crowded subway, train, or bus and felt squeezed and had to endure the smell of sweat, sometimes even alcohol? Apart from some people who behave as if they were in their own homes, sitting beyond their seat limit, talking loudly on speakerphone, forcing everyone to share their taste in music or their senseless conversations. People like this pose a challenge to everyone around and trigger very stressful situations, especially when the troublesome people are rude, defensive, and antisocial. And when they are reprimanded, they simply respond rudely or defensively and continue their disrespectful behavior towards others. All of us have, at some point, experienced this. Whether it's on public transportation, at airports, in lines, or at restaurants. Rude, immature, and ill-mannered people are everywhere. There are difficult people in every corner of the world and in all areas of life. They simply don't know how to behave. Or perhaps they do know, but don't care about respecting others. How to deal with these people? Within Stoicism, there are some answers. Dealing with difficult people is a common theme in Stoic books. They talked about deceitful siblings, bad parents, people who meddled in the lives of others, and those who abandoned their good manners and hygiene in a public restroom. So, what can we do about inconsiderate and smelly passengers, unpleasant colleagues, abusive bosses, or even narcissistic individuals we share our home with? In this video, we will delve into how to deal with these and other difficult people, including those who smell bad and living with a narcissist, through Stoicism. But before we start, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any knowledge, as it could change your life. First situation: rude people. After Epictetus was banished from Rome, along with other philosophers, he traveled to Nicopolis, a city in northern Greece, where he remained for the rest of his life. In Nicopolis, he founded a philosophical school, and among his students was a young and brilliant man named Arion. Without Arion, we might not be discussing the highly esteemed philosopher Epictetus today, as Arion recorded a vast collection of lectures and created a booklet with his teacher's most important lessons. One of these lessons presents a pillar of Roman civilization: the baths. Public baths were common in the Roman Empire, and Roman bath culture, based on that of the ancient Greeks, spread throughout the Mediterranean. Baths were predominantly a social practice. Romans visited the baths to meet friends and invite them to parties, and politicians frequented them to garner support from the people. Even the super rich, who could afford private bathing spaces, attended public baths because of their social aspects. Baths provided citizens with a place to exercise, socialize, relax, and have fun. However, as you probably imagined, as a wide range of people visited these public spaces, some unpleasant individuals were among the crowd. You know, those who purposefully splashed water, stole from others, or believed the public bathroom was theirs and behaved rudely. Reading Stoic texts, we can see that in many ways, human nature has not changed, and difficult people have always existed. So, what did Epictetus suggest about how to deal with difficult people back then? Epictetus told his students to remember the nature of their activity. We can attribute specific characteristics to each action. In the public bath, for example, there are things we can expect when we go there, even if we don't like them. People splashing water, pushing others, using abusive language, shouting, or intimidating. If we are aware of these inherent aspects of the bath, we should not be surprised when we encounter them. So, what should we do according to Epictetus? He suggests that the focus should not only be on the bath, but also on keeping the mind calm and under control. Similarly, we can treat public transportation the same way. What is the nature of this activity? Is taking public transportation always peaceful, with seats available for everyone? Are people always lovely and friendly? Do trains and buses always arrive on time without exception? Anyone will probably admit that even if this occasionally happens, this situation does not represent the reality of using public transportation. Instead, there are many unpleasant aspects such as noisy, smelly, and antisocial people who always want attention, invade others' space, and use their cell phones on speaker mode in a crowded subway or bus. So, what is the Stoic way to deal with this? Based on Epictetus's teaching, the answer is twofold. First, before going out, Stoics analyze the reality of using public transportation. Second, Stoics focus on keeping their minds calm. Therefore, when taking the bus, expect the possibility of delays. When taking the train, expect to encounter some unfriendly people, unpleasant passengers, many street vendors, and some beggars. Second situation, difficult people. Marcus Aurelius was considered one of the good emperors. In Meditations, he thanked the writings of Epictetus for Stoic teachings. As emperor, he had to deal with many people all day, every day, including some very difficult individuals. Some people were rude and demanding, others were unjust and unreliable. Being an emperor was a challenging job, and responsibility was a heavy burden. Imagine being the most influential person in the world. Many envy you and try to take your place, not to mention the responsibility of a vast empire depending solely on your decisions. Understandably, Marcus Aurelius sought an outlet, which took the form of a journal in which he wrote his reflections. He wrote about courage in times of need, the meaning of life, human nature, and, unsurprisingly, how to deal with difficult people. From his writings, let's examine an interesting example where Marcus Aurelius urged himself not to be bothered by people's bad odor. He stated, "Do not get upset by the foul smell of people or bad breath. What's the point? With that mouth, with those armpits, they will produce that odor. But they have a brain. Can't they notice? Can't they recognize the issue? Then you have a brain too. Good for you. Use your reasoning to awaken theirs. Show it to them. Make them realize. If they listen, then you have solved the problem, without anger." The idea is that we cannot control other people's behavior. Marcus Aurelius realized that even as an emperor, he had no complete power over his subjects. As you have probably experienced with people around you, they have their own brains, wills, and freedom of action. If something about them bothers us, we can only point it out, clearly stating the problem. But does that guarantee they will listen? Probably not. Some people smell bad and simply don't care. Unless we can force them to take a shower and use deodorant, their hygiene is not under our control, and therefore, as the Stoics would say, it's not worth worrying about. Third situation, chronic critics, controllers, and narcissists. When people exhibit behaviors we don't like, we often magnify these behaviors. One example almost everyone can relate to is how we view our parents. Especially as we age, we tend to focus on our parents' negative characteristics and ignore the positive ones. Yes, some parents make terrible choices, others don't accept criticism and live defensively, and still others believe they can make decisions for us, being quite controlling. These are some characteristics that make these people difficult to deal with and turn life into a challenge for everyone around. Unfortunately, there is often not much we can do about them, as only they can decide to change. And these are aspects that tend to push us away instead of bringing us closer. But Epictetus encouraged us not to give up on these people. The Enchiridion shares a lesson rooted in tolerance, showing that all things, including people, have more sides to them than their negative characteristics. Epictetus spoke to a student who was having trouble with a brother who acted unjustly, whether with him or others. So he gave him the following advice: Everything has two handles, one by which you can carry it, and the other by which you cannot. If your brother acts unjustly, don't take the handle of his injustice and use it against him, but rather take the other handle, that he is your brother, that you were raised together, and then you will be conducting yourself as his true kin. In many cases, from personal experience, changing your perspective makes a big difference. Sometimes, especially when we are alone with our thoughts, we let our minds magnify people's negative sides, turning them into great villains who wreak havoc around us. The handle, as Epictetus called it, becomes more significant than the person to whom it is attached. So, what helps is simply focusing on the other side of the person, as there is much more to someone than being an idiot, a liar, a fool, or a drama queen. There may be complementary aspects that can still support a bond, another handle to hold. However, there are situations so bad that no handle can bear them. Some people are simply too toxic to be around. They are more likely to drag you down than for you to lift them up. Imagine sharing your home with someone who starts a fire that produces smoke. As long as the fire is controllable and the smoke is bearable, you see no reason to leave. But what will you do when the smoke becomes unbearable? Will you stay inside or leave? Consider the circle of people in your life, family, friends, and colleagues. They can be invigorating, loving, and inspiring, or they can drain you with chronic criticism, control, and narcissism. Today, there are thousands of people living in toxic relationships, whether in family, romantic, friendship, or professional relationships, enduring an accumulation of smoke from being around extremely controlling, chronic critical, or complete narcissistic individuals. When they decide to leave such a relationship, they are often psychologically and emotionally destroyed. Some people who meet the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, listed in the DSM-5, often refuse to be officially diagnosed because they don't believe they have a problem, contrary to the world around them, of course. Regardless of the labels they belong to, they act with a complete disregard for other people's personal boundaries. Instead of making you feel better, these people examine you from head to toe, finding fault in everything related to you. Instead of lifting you up, they pull you down, making sure you feel bad about yourself and life in general. They are negative, critical, and belittling. They may manipulate your feelings with emotional blackmail and pathological lies. They may like to fill your mind with doubts and half-truths about yourself, others, and even undermine your achievements and accomplishments. And some people, because they share the same environment, believe they are obliged to tolerate this. It is this obligation that often keeps us in relationships that destroy us. Wrong relationships corrupt, pollute, infect, rot, and destroy good character. As bad incidents accumulate, the idea of obligation loses credibility. We begin to see the person, not from our personal perspective and the authority or power they have in our lives, but as they are, and the situation as it is. We must recognize that there is a limit we should endure and remain true to it. The vast collection of lectures recorded by Epictetus called Discourses presents a comparison about smoke in a house, which goes like this. Is someone making smoke in the house? If they make a moderate amount of smoke, I stay. If it's too much, I leave. The comparison is generally explained as an argument, saying that when life becomes unbearable, it's time to leave. Epictetus refers to difficult people. He tells a story about someone who didn't want to have dinner at someone else's house because they couldn't stand their arrogance. So Epictetus concluded, just don't do anything as someone overwhelmed or distressed or thinking they are in a miserable situation, for no one forces you to. Here, he seemed to emphasize our ability to choose. When dealing with difficult people or complete narcissists, is there a possibility to leave? If so, we can walk out that door and never look back at any moment. The vanity of retaliation. When people hurt us, we can indulge in various revenge fantasies. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth seems fair, If someone has harmed us or committed an injustice against us, don't we feel justified in getting back at them? Living in a toxic relationship evokes this kind of feeling. For years, we think about revenge, about settling scores. We don't think about acting the same way, but perhaps by showing our success as a form of revenge, proving that the toxic person was wrong about us. We imagine that our best revenge is to show our results, achieve the success that was never believed we could attain. Although this form of revenge is productive and doesn't aim to harm anyone, it is still a revenge and is still fueled by anger. And when you think about it, you are using your life and your time to get back at a toxic person, so they are still in control of your actions. As Epictetus said, any person capable of angering you becomes your master. They can anger you only when you permit yourself to be disturbed by them. In this way, you not only relive the countless boundaryless situations you tolerated, but also waste your energy seeking something beyond your control. It is natural to desire a reaction of admiration, recognition, remorse, acceptance, and perhaps an apology. But when dealing with toxic people, none of these will likely ever happen, no matter what you do. Epictetus presented a different perspective on the futility of revenge. Essentially, he saw revenge as unnecessary and harmful to oneself. If we seek revenge because of an injury, something someone did to us, let's first consider Epictetus's suggestion to think about what constitutes an injury. What is an injury? When someone betrays you, are you injured? When someone cuts your hand, are you injured? According to conventional standards, you probably consider these events as injuries. But Epictetus argued that a real injury involves a lack of morality in someone's actions. Therefore, if someone lies to you or steals from you, that person is injured because they have damaged their virtue, which is the only true and good thing, according to the Stoics. Epictetus stated, "For if good and evil lie in the will, see whether what you are saying does not come to this. Since so-and-so has hurt me by what is his own fault, I in turn will hurt him by what is my fault. Revenge is sweet, they say, and while that may be true in some cases, sweetness is often fleeting. Whether virtue is or is not, the only good is a discussion for another time." But Epictetus was right to say that, by hurting the man who had hurt me, I would hurt myself. It's a different way of saying, don't stoop to their level. It's not worth it. Furthermore, the intended harm may not even occur, as the suffering we hope to inflict depends on how they react to our actions. It's not within our control. So, this is how the Stoics deal with difficult people, narcissists, controllers, and chronic critics. And the thought we leave you with is, how will you deal with difficult people from now on? And if you like this content, don't forget to share it with someone who might need it. Help us spread this amazing knowledge. Now, if you want to understand a bit more about Stoicism, just click on one of the videos that's appearing on your screen. Thank you for watching.